We have a collection of like 20 or so books. We're going to go by like genre. So at the bottom, I'll timestamp the genre so you can like skip around depending on what type of books you are interested in. This is a collection from like many, many months because over the summer, I really was not reading very much. If you are a follower of mine and you've been like watching my channel, you'll know that over the last few weeks, I've been doing a series where I have been trying to reach my reading goal of 100 books by the end of the year. And like, it's not looking great because I'm like very, very, very behind. Includes some of those books, but also a bunch of the books that I read before I started this challenge. It's a mix of things. We've got some thriller, we've got some horror, we've got lots of romance and some romantasy, and I'm really excited to chat about all of them with you. So let's get started. We're going to start with a kind of combined category of like thrillers and also a spooky book or two. First up, we have Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. I picked this one up because I read Gillian's last book, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which was like a time travel thriller, and I loved that one so much. This one I didn't like quite as much. I think Wrong Place, Wrong Time has this like really strong, interesting like family dynamic and also this interesting speculative element with the time travel. This one, Famous Last Words, does not have a speculative element, but the pitch is like really good, and that is this woman is like a young mother and her husband leaves her like a weird note. He's kind of being weird. He leaves her a weird note. She gets a call. She finds out her husband is in a hostage situation and she's like, oh no. And they're like, yeah, your husband is the one holding everyone hostage. And she says, that's kind of weird. That's strange because like we're just like a normal family. This morning we were feeding our baby at the breakfast table. Like, what do you mean? My husband is the one holding everyone hostage. He had left her like a vague note. She's trying to kind of figure out what happens. And that's kind of the first chunk of the novel is this day of the hostage situation. And this day was like edge of your seat, like super fast paced. I want to compare it to like Night Watching by Tracy Sierra, which is another book which I feel like had a similar like structure in which like the beginning is like could not put this book down, super high stakes. Then we get a little time jump in this book and we start to like unpack the mystery. So we get a time jump 7 years in the future and we're still following the mother and we're also following the hostage negotiator who's kind of become fixated on this case. There's like a lot of loose ends about it. It doesn't totally make sense to anyone. And it's about this like mother kind of like trying to put her life back together after her husband does this horrible thing and she doesn't understand why. And also like he goes missing after the hostage situation and like she doesn't know where he is. And also this hostage negotiator who feels very attached to this case because like, again, none of the loose ends were really tied up. I thought it was really interesting, really compelling in terms of the actual situation itself. To me, the second part, because the first part is so high stakes, the second part dragged a little bit because just we're like in the mystery. We're trying to sort things out. But if you can like handle that like pace differential, I would say like it is a really engaging premise, like super interesting. There's some twists and turns, obviously, and overall like a solid thriller. Then I read The Last Session by Julia Bartz, and this book I actually read only on planes pretty much. I started this book on a trip at the beginning of July to a wedding out in Southern California, and I finished this book on an airplane in September out to California once again. Actually, I think I finished it on the way back from California. So this book was read over the course of many, many months, which for sure might tint my opinion of it. Although my opinion is generally good. I really like Julia Bartz's thrillers. She wrote The Writing Retreat, which came out last year, and she writes like ridiculous thrillers. Like, are these realistic? No, but I'm reading a fiction novel. So I'm on board with that. This one we're following a social worker who works in a mental hospital, and a woman is brought in. They like find this woman who is like nonverbal they find her like on the side of the road. They bring her into this mental hospital, and the social worker recognizes her as a movie star from her favorite movie from childhood. And one of the reasons this movie, this like cult classic movie about like, I think it's like an Egyptian princess situation, was one of her favorites as a child, is because she looks so much like this actress. They look incredibly similar. And what winds up happening is we wind up finding out that this actress is somehow connected to this like wellness center in New Mexico, and a few things happen. It takes us a while to get here, but the social worker winds up traveling to that wellness center in New Mexico to kind of investigate what might have caused this actress to essentially like be nonverbal on the side of the road, like clearly not doing well. It gets super weird. There are like cult vibes. There's like a supernatural element, maybe. Like, definitely has you like questioning whether it's like supernatural or not. I will say that this one does have some like substantial conversations around some heavier themes, particularly around like grooming, maybe lightly religious trauma as well. I would, if any of those like childhood sort of things seem like they might be upsetting to you, double check the triggers on this one, because this one did have some like heavier stuff kind of mixed in with all of the like cult and silly antics. So do be aware of that. But like really fun. If you like a fun thriller where like things are cuckoo bananas, this is for you. The last one, interesting, less cuckoo bananas. This one, definitely more cuckoo bananas. Then we had, I read With a Vengeance by Riley Sager. I have read every single Riley Sager. I'm just like other girls. This one, I feel like has been one that has not been as popular. It is like got like a 3.4 on Goodreads, which is like fairly low, I think, for Riley Sager. But it's my favorite of the last few he's written. To me, he's really been experimenting with kind of styles within the thriller genre over the last few books he's written, and I really liked this one. This one felt a little bit more like a classic mystery. Like, we still had some like thrills and some twists, but like the basic premise is we're following this woman who has invited 6 people on this train. She's rented out the entire train. It's the 1950s. She's rented out this entire train. They're going from Philadelphia to Chicago, which is like a 14-hour ride. So we're like in real time, which is super fun. And they're all connected to her past, and she's invited him here for a reason. But then they start to die. And she goes, this was actually not part of my plan. This was not part of my scheme. That's not really what I was going for. And so they're like trying to figure out what to do. Are they making good choices? No, they're making terrible choices. They are. They're like, people are dying. We should all go to our separate rooms by ourselves. No, if people are dying, you all stick together. Obviously. Don't be silly goofy, but I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, that again, realism is just like never a problem for me. Like, if you need your books to be realistic, I'm not the girl to recommend books to you, because I get bored. And this book didn't bore me, but I do feel like it does end on like, for me, it ended on like the cozier end of thriller. Like, I was having a cozy time. I wasn't really frightened. I wasn't really on the edge of my seat very much. I mean, again, I was like reading, compelled to continue reading, but like it was like kind of like a cozier thriller. It seems kind of weird to say that because it's definitely not bloodless. Like, there are definitely like quite a few murders, there are quite a few twists, but I think the vintagey vibe just led to me having like a cozier thriller experience. Then I read, I guess, the only horror in this collection, my collection of books I read last month, and that is Sisters by Daisy Johnson. This book is weird. Okay, let's all gather around and like collectively be like, okay, yeah, it is weird. I would say the closest comparison is if you read Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti, and also Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. That would be the closest comp. I will say I listened to the audiobook, and I would recommend the audiobook. Daisy Edgar Jones does most of it. There are some chapters by someone else. The mother has a different voice actor, and I can't remember who. I also feel as though it is a famous actress. It is like a incredibly well-written story, like very literary. It is quite short. I think it was only like 5 or 6 hours. And the audiobook, it is so weird. I'm going to say weird 100 times in my review, and like, know that I mean every single one of them. Know that I mean every single weird that I state. The basic premise is we're following these 2 sisters who are 10 months apart. We have July and September being the older sister, July being the younger sister, and they and their mother, she's a single mom, is moving them to this like small beachside town in England after something major happened with the girls in Oxford. We know some event happened in Oxford, and we're kind of getting flashbacks to the things that were happening back in Oxford that led up to this like big event. And then we're also in the present in this like little house in like the seaside town, and everything is weird. The dynamic between the sisters is strange. Like, the older sister is very controlling of what the younger sister does, and they have like a very kind of like strange, yucky, spooky dynamic between the 2 of them. The house itself is strange, where we see like things coming out of the walls and like sounds in the basement, and we're not sure what's really happening and what's not really happening. The mom doesn't seem to be doing super well. We're worried about what happened back in Oxford. There is just like this sense of like dread that kind of like seeps through the whole book as all of this weird stuff is happening, and you're just like waiting for the other shoe to drop because you know something major happened to get them to move all the way across the country out here, but you're not sure what, and you are frightened. You're frightened for July, the younger sister. You are frightened for anyone else involved. But it is like weird. I feel like some of the stuff we didn't get like fully explained, except for the fact that like things are wonky. The ending is bananas. The ending, bananas. I wish there were more author interviews. I like want to hear Daisy Johnson talk about this book forever. I like want to. I've listened to like any of the ones I can find on YouTube because I want to hear her talk like in depth about this book. I want to hear people's thoughts because I feel like I like missed things because like clearly there's like a lot of meaning in like every aspect of this, and I feel like I missed things. But if you like a more like literary weird horror, this is the book for you, for sure. But it's like a very niche genre of person who I think would like it. You need like very literary, but also like very weird horror. I would say if you love a like there were a couple short stories in Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado that also kind of gave this vibe as well. Kind of give you a sense of triangulating where this book lives. Because it's, I would say it's like the perfect book for a very, very niche type of person. Okay, switching genres entirely. We're going to switch over to our contemporary romance category, which has a few titles in it as well. First thing I read, of course, was my girl Emily Henry's release for the year. I'm always going to be reading the Emily Henry releases, and if I have anything bad to say about it, it's not me. Call the police. Call the police, it's not me. I know people didn't like this book, and I think they're wrong. I loved this one. I thought it was so fun. I thought it was so great. Is it my favorite? Emily Henry? No. Beach Read is still the queen, McQueenerson. I would have to do a recalculation of where this one would fall in terms of my favorites, but I think somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's my least favorite either. I really enjoyed this one. It definitely is the least romance of Emily Henry's books, and I think a lot of people complained about that, and I think rightly. Like if you were in it for the romance, yeah, there was a lot of book that wasn't that. We are following these two writers. I wrote them down. Alice and Hayden, and they are both on this small island off the coast of Georgia, talking with this like heiress, and this heiress has gone off the grid essentially. She was super famous in all the headlines, and then some stuff happened and she just like vanished from the public eye, and apparently she's been living on this island, and so they have both been brought down to compete for the opportunity to write her memoir, to like ghostwrite her memoir for her, or to co-write her memoir for her. And we have Alice, who is this kind of more pop culture sort of writer. She's writing for like an online magazine, I think, doing like pop fiction. I keep saying fiction. Pop culture writing for these online magazines. Definitely something like a little bit more lowbrow. And then Hayden is coming off of this like massive book that was like a massive success over like I think a rock star or something that he wrote. So he's like a famous at this point celebrity memoirist. And so they've both been brought down there. Alice really like sought out this opportunity, and she's kind of surprised when she gets down there. I don't think she was expecting to see Hayden. And the heiress, whose name is Margaret, is like, okay, I'm going to tell you my story slowly over like the course of the summer. And so they have to spend like many weeks down here in which they're meeting with Margaret on some days. And then they wind up hanging out quite a bit because they're on this small island. There's not like a ton to do. And so they wind up interacting quite a bit, and like a romance buds between Alice and Hayden. They have very different dispositions. Hayden is very like type A, rigid, and Alice is very much not. And of course they all have their own personal stuff they're dealing with. Alice is dealing with like the struggle of like not wanting to disappoint her family. Yeah, we get like the classic M. Hen story building behind the scenes. I think what a lot of people struggle with is this story is told kind of in alternating chapters, maybe not totally alternating, but we get chapters from Alice's perspective on like the present day, what's happening. And then we also get these chapters that are Margaret telling her story. And I love the Margaret chapters. Some people were Margaret haters, not me. I love the Margaret chapters. I would have been happy if this was just a Margaret book. It's very much, Margaret is giving the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, like a very similar vibe to that, although her story is obviously quite different. I will say one of the things that I did really enjoy about this book is, to me, this book did have like a lot of similarities to Beach Read. In fact, at one point, I think I said that like it kind of felt like January and Gus were doing like an extended role play situation here off of coastal Georgia. Not that like Hayden and Gus actually had that much in common, or Alice and January in terms of like their personality traits, but like Gus being like serious writer, Hayden serious writer, Alice pop culture writer, and January like romance writer. There were some similarities. I liked how writerly it was. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Then I read Love Interest by Claire Gilmore. This is a debut, and I really loved it. I have her, she's released a book this year, and she has one scheduled for next year, and I have them both on my TBR because I did really enjoy her. She was a new to me romance author, and great. This is like a co-workers, enemies to lovers situation that is set at a magazine, primarily this magazine that is kind of like Bon Appetit adjacent. And as a girly who was like obsessed with Bon Appetit in 2019, like my KitchenAid stand mixer is named Claire after Claire Saffitz. I really enjoyed that aspect. I really enjoyed kind of seeing their like work dynamics, and I did like eat that up. We are following Casey and Alex, and Casey is an accountant, but her family wishes she was more creative. This was like the weirdest part for me. She's like, I am doing a boring job, and my family thinks I should be doing a creative girly job, and she's like not creative and loves being an accountant. Okay. What an interesting struggle. But she is like vying for this like project, this like position at the company, and she finds out Alex is going to come in, and he winds up getting it. We find out he's kind of like a nepo baby. He has gone to a lot of prestigious schools, like he has connections with the company, and so initially she like hates him, but they very quickly wind up working together fairly closely on this project because she winds up doing the financials because she's also vying for this role in London. And I really liked their dynamics. I really liked both of their personal journeys and their relationships with their families and their friends, and I felt like it was a very well lived in world. Like we got to know a lot about their lives in this way that made them feel like quite real. I really enjoyed their interpersonal dynamics, and just like in general how like deep their personal lives felt. I would definitely recommend it if you like a hearty, substantial romance. Then I read Devil in the Deep Blue Sea by Elizabeth O'Rourke. This is like an older Kindle Unlimited book. I have been reading more Elizabeth O'Rourke's this year, kind of like sprinkling them in throughout. I've been really liking her new stuff, but this is definitely one of her backlists. And it's also like the second book in a series of standalones, and I did feel a little lost at the beginning. I think this might be better if you read them in order. So maybe don't do what I did. But overall, I did enjoy the story. It's like a chunkier book, and it is definitely like plottier. And that, as someone, I like prefer like a plottier romance novel. Like I want a lot of stuff happening. We almost have like 2 stories in this one. So we start with this pop star, and she is on a vacation in Hawaii with her ex-boyfriend's family. She's still like kind of seeing him, but they're like on the fritz, her and her ex-boyfriend. And she gets there, and her ex-boyfriend is not there. He has gotten detained in Japan for possessing drugs. And so he's not invited, or he's not able to enter Hawaii. And so she's there with his parents and his brother. And she has a feud with his brother because his brother accused her of trying to steal the silver from their house. Okay. She's also dealing with a lot of like pop star drama fallout because she has like stumbled on stage recently, and she had to cancel some shows, and people are assuming that she is an addict. And we learn a little bit more about what's happening there. So we have this situation that happens in Hawaii in which she's like going on this Hawaiian vacation, getting closer to this brother, kind of the whole vacation. The ex does eventually show back up. He's the worsty worst. They like formally end things. Okay. And then her and the brother are like romance, brewing. They get back to real life. She is going back to her pop star life, and the brother, who is actually a doctor in Somalia at this like refugee camp through like Doctors Without Borders, is going back to his job in Somalia. And they like definitely felt some chemistry, but like now they're living such disparate lives. They're like not sure how they're going to make it work. So there's like a lot happening. We have like the pop star normal person dynamics. We also have like the family vacation, and also like the brother of the boyfriend. And also like, there's just like a lot happening. I enjoyed that. I like a lot happening. But if you are like, this seems like too much, it is a lot. Then I read Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. I really enjoyed Julie Soto's book that came out a couple years ago. That was the wedding book. I can't remember it, with like the florist and the wedding planner. I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of this book as well. Like overall, I enjoyed the book. I didn't love the romance, if that makes sense. I'm someone who definitely can enjoy the book and not like the romance. Like, absolutely. I really liked the story. I loved the world. We're following this violinist and this cellist, and they're both like, you know, prodigies in their own rights, and they wind up being able to play like a lot of different string instruments. They're both in this orchestra together, and then he also is in this like famous popular music string band. I think it's supposed to be like Vitamin String quartet sort of vibes, and has been like a famous prodigy, where she was grew up in this like really difficult situation in which her mother died when she was quite young, and she was raised by her grandfather, and so she was quite poor, was essentially tutored through the like goodness of the local music shop owner, Mabel, who is still like family to her, but definitely like very different upbringings. And they start out kind of as rivals in this orchestra. They don't have great dynamics. Initially, he's kind of an asshole, to be honest. He's kind of mean to her initially and like really critiques the way she's playing. And like in some respects, maybe he's a little bit right, but also like he's just being mean. And they wind up developing like a romance, a friendship over their just like deep love of music. and I loved the music. I loved her. I didn't love Xander. I felt Xander was overbearing. Our girly Gwen is like quite young. She's 22. She did not go to college. This orchestra is her first job that she's ever had. And she feels very young. She doesn't really know what she wants from her future. She doesn't know what next steps make the most sense. She's feeling a lot of pressure from everyone in her life, from like the head and the conductor of the orchestra to the Mabel, the owner of this music store, and then from Xander as well. And I just like feel like he was very overbearing in a way that I was like, stop, let her breathe, let her make choices for herself. And I didn't feel like she was giving the space to do that. I just didn't really love their dynamic. In fact, this is one of the few times I'm like a girly who like will buy into a romance. Okay. I'll buy into a romance with like the worst of men. Like the fact that your boyfriend is an assassin, that doesn't bother me. The fact that your boyfriend kidnapped you and that's how you found each other, no problem there. But this felt, one, because I think it was like a contemporary, this felt a little different. And at the like third act breakup, I was like, run, girl, don't go back to him. Run, get out of there. So that was like a little bit of a disappointment for me. I think other people, I should have looked at Goodreads reviews, but like I really enjoyed the story still, even though I didn't love them together. Because they do have a lot of chemistry. Like I can see why it would work, but I just don't know if it would be the best choice for our girl Gwenny. Also, there's this like subplot that's happening where like Mabel, the like music store owner, and Ava, the head of this orchestra, like have something that happened in their past. And I was certain, this is like, I guess a spoiler of something that doesn't happen. I was certain that it was going to be like a love affair, like that they were young and in love, and they weren't. And I like was waiting for it to like the last page. Every reveal that happened, I was like, yes. And also they used to kiss. Yes, I understand that she's married to a man now, but like Ava used to be deeply, madly in love with Mabel. And that never happens. And I'm a little disappointed by that too, Julie Soto. Why didn't they kiss? Like that was the romance I was really invested in, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen for me. Okay, we're switching to more literary fiction. These two books, harder to categorize. They're more literary, so they got stuck together. First was The Ministry of Time by Kaylin Bradley. I got pitched this book as a romance, and I think that did me a huge disservice because this book is not a romance. If anyone tells you this book is a romance, they didn't read it. They didn't read it. Someone else in their book club read it, and that was their favorite part. But like, I don't think they actually read it. This book is science fiction. Yeah, which I think it was what it was categorized in as Goodreads Choice Award. It's like science fiction spy government workings book. Like to me, it read a little bit like Killing Eve meets time travel. Not that there's like an assassin, but like Killing Eve takes place in like the British CIA, and like you can feel those vibes. You know, and that's my only real reference point to the British CIA, to be honest, is Killing Eve. And then it also has like a strong time travel element. The plot is we're following this unnamed protagonist who is a bridge. She has worked for worked for the British government for a while. I think she works as like a translator, and she gets this opportunity to become a bridge. And she essentially is acting as a liaison to the modern day to this man who has traveled through time to be here. Essentially, the British government has discovered time travel, and they have scooped up a bunch of people from the past, and they want them to be studied, essentially, to see how time travel affects them. So they're people that would have died in the past, and they're from like a variety of different time periods, and they just get like scooped up and brought to the present day, and then their bridges like live with them and kind of act to like help them acclimate to the world, and also to monitor them to make sure that nothing weird happens to them because they time traveled. Okay. Our guy that this person is following from the Navy in 1847. That's where they've snatched him from and brought him here. Okay. There is eventually like a little romance between the two of them, a little chemistry. That is so far the subplot. Like it is the subplot. I don't even think they like really start like having any chemistry until like the halfway point of the book. Like it is really like a substantially subplot. This book had a similar vibe to me as The Husbands by Holly Gramazio, in that it was kind of like this cold speculative novel. There is a level of detachment that I felt like both of these books have, in which the characters don't really seem like emotionally invested in the relationships that they are forming. I did not find myself emotionally attached to anyone in this book. Like the plot was incredibly interesting, incredibly like well put together, like fascinating, twisty, turny, interesting. Emotionally, I felt that this book was like a little cold, and it's just not my personal preference. I'm a girly who's an emotional girly. If you've seen any of my like Throne of Glass conversations, like I be crying. And this book just like gave me nothing, and I wanted a little bit more like emotional depth to sink my teeth into. Do not take my word for it though. Like people love this book. I think it was like quite popular last year when it came out, and I do think it is incredibly interesting, incredibly cool plot. It just like emotionally wasn't resonant. And a story that was emotionally resonant and did make me sob my little eyes out is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is the story of William Shakespeare's family, mostly his wife Agnes and their children. We're following kind of like two timelines for most of the story. We're following the timeline in which like William is like meeting Agnes and kind of they're alive together up until like the present day, not the present day, like our present day, but like their present day. And in their present day, they're dealing with the bubonic plague and their son dying. And that is not a spoiler. We know from like the opening page, Maggie O'Farrell like makes note, like on the first page, the historical note that like the Shakespeare's youngest son, Hamnet, does die. It was so beautifully written, just absolutely stunning. So emotional. I feel sometimes with literary fiction, I really struggle with this like cold sort of literary fiction. It's like a very common thing that happens in literary fiction in which there is this level of indifference and detachment from like the characters and what is happening because it is like so in their head. This book just like didn't have that at all. It was so beautifully written. When I was reading it, I was in it. Like it was like very compelling. It is definitely like a more challenging book than like an Elizabeth O'Rourke in terms of like you do have to pay more attention. Okay. But it was like well worth it. I was engaged. I was sobbing. If you watch the video of me reading Hamnet, I like sob through a good chunk of the middle. It is just like so beautiful. I think this won the Women's Prize in 2020 when it came out, and I think it is well deserved. Like so beautiful, so gorgeous. One of my favorite books I've read so far this year. If you have like you don't have to be like a Shakespeare aficionado. I'm like often scared away from books that like reference Shakespeare heavily because like the only Shakespeare I've read, I was mandated to read by my high school English teacher. And so I've read like 3 plays. Maybe one day I'll read more. But like you do not need to be like invested in Shakespeare to have read this. You don't need to have any like historical context. Like Maggie O'Farrell provides what you need. She provides what you need. Maybe you'd get more out of it if you know Shakespeare. I don't know. I don't know Shakespeare, so I can't tell you. But I think it is like so beautiful, so poignant. And the movie's coming out. Paul Mescal is William Shakespeare. So that could be fun. It's one of the reasons I read it actually was because I wanted to read it before the movie came out. Our last category and also our longest category is Romantasy. I read a lot of Romantasy, which is good. I'm glad I'm back in my Romantasy bag. For a while there, I was like not reading Romantasy. And like, who is that girl? This is my category. So let's talk through what I read. So first thing I read was A Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. I read this and recapped it. So if you want to watch the recaps, they're on the channel in order to prepare for the latest release, which I have not read yet. I have a signed copy somewhere in that stack over there, but I haven't read it yet. Coming up, we're following in this, if you're not familiar with like the larger series, this is the 3rd book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, full-length book. There's a couple novellas in there that follows Misha and Asar. Misha was like the friend of our guy from the first set. The Crowns of Nyaxia series is interconnected duologies. So there are going to be 3 duologies that follow different couples. So our first couple followed Rain and Oreya, and we're done with them for now. We see them like appear, but like their romance story is done. Now we're following Misha and Asar in this duology. And so I've read the first book. Gotta read the second book still. Misha and Asar. Misha is like the best friend, like super happy, super like clearly had trauma in her past, but like is the optimist of optimists in the first book. And it was really interesting to get to experience her from herself. Like we see her inner thoughts. And in this book, she is traveling and she gets kidnapped, or she gets like taken by the Shadowborn. Yes, the Shadowborn vampires. They catch her, they capture her, and they're going to execute her. But then Asar, who is like the bastard son of the Shadowborn king, comes and he grabs her and he says, I need her for a mission from Nyaxia, who's like the goddess of the vampires. That mission is to kind of like go through the underworld to carry out this mission from Nyaxia. And so most of the story follows Asar and Misha as they travel through the underworld. It's kind of like a Dante, but with vampires. There's also a ghost dog that is heavily involved in the series named Luce, and I love her. She's the love of my life. She's so cute, and I picture her to look like the dogs from Coco. I will warn you again, this one deals with some like fairly heavy themes. There's particularly like a lot of conversation around religious trauma and like an abusive relationship for Misha, but it's really good. I loved it. I'm excited to read the next one at some point, hopefully soon. Next, I'm going to talk about all 3 books because I read all 3 of them like in rapid succession. I read, the first one is called The Female, and then it's called Her Males and Their War. The Female is such a like cringy title. I like hate that I have to say it to you. Like I wish this girl would have named it anything else. It is by Invi Wright. I like have notes on all these books, and this one says, look, sometimes I read Hamnet and sometimes I read this. Okay. This book is on Kindle Unlimited, and it takes place in this world in which the rate at which women are being born is like substantially lower than it should be, and so birth rates are like just like down across the board. And we're also in a world in which like demons and werewolves and all sorts of creatures are coexisting with humans. And because women are like such a limited resource, they are being like bought and sold, and if you have a woman, you have to like keep her hidden, otherwise she'll be like kidnapped away. Okay, things are bad. Our story opens with our girly Charlotte, and Charlotte is being sold off. She winds up getting captured. She was like living with her family, hiding in the basement. They catch her. She gets sold off to this trio of men. The like main one being like, or the main one, like the boss of this trio being the king of the wrath demons. And then he has 2 boyfriends, and his boyfriends are a fate and a succubus. Okay. They buy her for the succubus because succubus they gain their energy and their power and their magic from pleasure. And so he needed a girl to keep him company and make sure to power him up. Because like the dynamics between the 3 men is like kind of fraught. The boyfriends have a fraught relationship, but the boyfriends do wind up being boyfriends. Despite the fact that I just described the most cuckoo bananas kind of like dark plot to you, it is kind of a sweet book. Like when she gets there, the guys are like pretty chill, pretty nice. She's not kept as like a human slave. It is not anything like super dark when she gets there. It's nice. She has a nice time. She likes these men. It is like fairly plotty too. Like Charlotte gets there and is like, hey guys, I like don't think it's cool the world we live in which like women are being bought and sold. Can we stop that? And the boys are like, fine. The boyfriends decide they need to do something because their girlfriend has asked them to. And it is like incredibly spicy, like high spice level, but also like kind of a lot is happening. And it was a good time. There are more books in the series, but I think this trilogy, like the first 3 follow this couple, and then the next one does not follow them. And I was like, I think I'm done. So I don't think I'll be continuing the series past this. I got my fill. It was delightful. I would recommend it if you're like really just need something like brainless, like a delightful brainless little time. But I won't be continuing past this because I don't need to dip into other people. I don't care what. I think the next book is on one of the werewolves, and I don't care about him. Sorry to him. He's a nice guy, but there are some tropes in the second book particularly that I know people are like against, very anti. I thought they were fine, and I thought they were fairly well done and like talked through and explained. But if you have like some tropes, not like triggers, but like tropes that you like absolutely won't do, okay, you can go read the reviews on the second book and they will tell you. They'll spoil all the tropes that get used that people don't like. Because there's 2 of them that are probably the 2 most unpopular romance book tropes, and both of them are in the second book. The next book I read was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, which is actually the first book that my Patreon book club read, where we have a monthly book club in which we read a book. And every week I read a like selection of chapters based on like, we divide it out based on how many weeks we have. I read the chapters for the week and do like a little mini podcast from like 20-30 minutes of me chatting about my my first impressions to the chapters. And at the very end of the month, I do a little video chatting about everything. So Night in the Moth was the first book I read for this, and I loved it. I'm so glad I wound up reading it. I was like back and forth on whether I wanted to read it, and the fact that people voted for it was what pushed me over to read it over on Patreon, because I did not love One Dark Window. I know people talk about that one a lot, and they're like, they recommend it to me, they asked me to recap it, and I just like didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I just like, I don't know, something about it didn't hit for me, and I definitely know it was a me problem, because I think like everyone else that I've heard talk about it loved it, and I loved this one. So I don't know what my deal was. Maybe I was in a bad mood that day. But anyway, The Night in the Moth follows this like French inspired, it seems like medieval French inspired world in which there is this magic system in which there are gods. Okay. But we are at this like cathedral where these 6 prophetesses live. They don't have names. They just have numbers 1 through 6. And they predict the future in this kind of like horrific way in which they like are drowned. And then while they're like unconscious, they dream of these like 6 omens, these like 6 gods that live in the land, and like from there they can predict like what is going to happen. And the story opens with a prince and a few knights coming to get their future read at this cathedral. But unfortunately, things start going like weird pretty quickly after these guys arrive. Some of the prophetesses start going missing, and we're following 6, and we're following her story, like her perspective on this, and her sisters are vanishing, and she's nervous about that, and she's having some like weird interactions with these knights in which she is like the good girl prophetess, like she follows the rules, but she is starting to break them a little bit because of these guys, and they wind up going like a journey together, her and the knights and the prince, to go find the missing girlies. I just thought the world was super interesting. I thought the things it had to say about like power were really fascinating as well. And I thought it was like so unique. I enjoyed it a lot. I would definitely say that this is not super romance heavy. I know I have put it in the Romantasy category, and there is definitely like a strong romance, but I wouldn't say romance is the primary plot. I would say it is definitely secondary. Like if I use my like true definition of Romantasy, which is that like the plot cannot exist without the romance, this would not fall into that. There's also a gargoyle. I forgot to mention him, but he's really important to me. There's a gargoyle that is a huge part of this journey that like comes with her from the cathedral on this journey with him, and he's like comedic relief, and he's just like the sweetest little bug. Okay, Luce is like the star of Songbird in the Heart of Stone, and the gargoyle is like the star of The Night in the Moth, in terms of like he's just like a sweet little guy. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this if that at all sounds interesting. It's not like a classic Romantasy, so if you're looking for like a classic like romance heavy enemies to lovers sort of situation, don't look here. But if you want something like a fresh take on a fantasy, I would recommend this. It is a duology. The second book is out next year, I believe, so it is incomplete at this point. Then I read Born of Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the final book in the Flesh and Fire series, which is like the spin-off series of From Blood and Ash. Okay. I saw this and I was like, I don't remember what happened in this book. I had to go watch my own recap. I recapped the entire From Blood and Ash series up until this latest book over on Patreon, and I don't remember any of it. It like has all blurred together in my mind because I was reading these books so fast that like it's all gone. I really liked this one. Apparently I gave it a good rating. Let me kind of explain where we're at, because at this point I can't tell you too much about the plot because we're deep in the Blood and Ash series. But if you're not familiar with this series, From Blood and Ash started as a series that was supposed to be like 4 books. It's not done yet, and I think we're at book like 10. Okay. It's spiraled. We have From Blood and Ash, and then we have the spin-off series that is a prequel series called A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is actually 4 books. I think it's 4. It's like actually 4 books. It's complete. This book was the final book in that spin-off series that is following it's like 500 years before From Blood and Ash happens. But I don't think you could really grasp what is happening in From Blood and Ash unless you've read this prequel series. A lot of people actually like this prequel series a little better. I think the writing and the plotting is like a little bit tighter. I think she had a much clearer vision of where she wanted to go. And so I do think things wrapped up a little bit tighter. By the end, I was really thoroughly loving it. We're following Nyktos, the like god of death. Yeah, he's the primal of death. And Sarah, who is like supposed to be his consort. She's been like fated to be his consort. We're following that dynamic. That is where the first book starts. This is obviously by this last book, we're in like the big giant war. You know how fantasy books go, but that's where we're kind of like starting. We're following that series. I really enjoyed this book. I really liked this spin-off series. I have not actually read the latest From Blood and Ash book, and it's not the final book. It's not the final book, and it's also huge. It's also 1,200 pages is what I've heard is the most recent From Blood and Ash book, and it's not even the end. We have another one, and I like really thought this last one, like the Primal of Blood and Ash, was going to be the last one. It's not. Like, she just can't write a conclusion to save her life. Jennifer, I love ya. From Blood and Ash, the first couple books in the series, like nothing releases dopamine in my brain like these books. Like, I just like adore the romance between Hawk and Poppy. Like, I adore it. I think it's so good. It like is just what I want. Just what I want. But like, I'm tired. Please let me rest. And she's never gonna let me rest. We're never gonna be done. I'm gonna be reading these books for the rest of my life. So would I recommend you start it? I don't know. Do you want to be tired? Then I read Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. This is Julie Soto's second appearance on this list. And this was another one I read for my Patreon book club. And it is the story. It is fan fiction that has been adapted to be stripped of its IP and published independently. Great. I'm going to talk about it as like an independent work, separate from that, because I actually feel like that's where things get messy. Beautiful. So we are following Bryony Evermore. And we're following her mostly in the aftermath of this big war. There's been this war that has been happening from between these two different lands, the Bombards and the Evermores. And the first couple chapters, we see the Evermores fall. Like, this is not a spoiler. The Evermores fall. They lose this big giant war. And Bryony is like a princess in the land of Evermore. And what winds up happening is there's two types of magic that are going on between the two kingdoms. Evermore uses head magic and Bombard uses heart magic. And they wind up taking all of like the prisoners of war that they've captured over the battles, and they wind up auctioning them off to various wealthy families in Bombard to act as like essentially like, I think they're called like heart springs, which are like sources of their magic. So heart magic is really limited by your like physical life force, but you can extend that by like attaching your magic to another human being, and you can use all their magic and all of your magic. They're like little battery packs. And so Bryony is auctioned off to Tovin. And Tovin is a young man she went to school with, because the Bombards and the Evermores do go to school together, even though they are mortal enemies. Okay, it's important to the story. And they went to school together, and so she like vaguely knows him from school. Now she's at his house. Okay, now she's at his house, supposed to be acting as his heart spring. She's trying to like kind of figure out like what to do now. She's kind of in a bad situation. Bombard is like the evil guys, and so she's trying to like figure out like how to help all these people that have been like auctioned off, and what she's supposed to do now. Her twin brother died in the last battle, and he was supposed to be like the savior of the people of Evermore. He was like prophesized to save them. It didn't work. He died. And so she's also dealing with like grief over that, like her whole kingdom being dead. There's like a lot happening, but also this book had like a weird tone. I think the thing that I struggled with the most, I had like kind of two major complaints with Rose in Chains. First one was I did have like kind of a hard time following the politics of the world. I like didn't have a clear understanding of like why these two nations were fighting, and like why Bombard was like evil, and like the political dynamics didn't make sense to me, and it seemed like a really important part of the book. Like, they don't need to make sense to me if it's not important to the book, but it like does seem like quite important to the book. So it was confusing that I was so confused by it. And the other thing I really struggled with was like tonally, this book kind of teeters the line between romance and this like dark world in a way that I like had a hard time grappling with. This is something that is just like a personal struggle for me. I know some people don't struggle with that. I found myself similarly struggling when I read Butcher and the Blackbird, which is like the serial killer romance. Like, I can't oscillate from like murder, depravity to like silly love. I like will do a dark romance with like a mafia, which has some like murdering and then some romance. But I think there's a difference between like funny, like silly, sweet, flirty, and dark versus like angsty romance and dark. if that makes sense. And I just had a really hard time oscillating. It's a personal issue. I just find myself really struggling to oscillate between like really, really dark portions of the narrative and these lighter parts. And I also didn't feel like I understood the purpose of the darker parts of the story, and perhaps they'll come together. Like, it is definitely a series, and perhaps like the politics of the world will make more sense. Like, there's definitely space for all of that to happen later in the series. I don't think I'm going to be continuing personally, just because I was not obsessed with it. Yeah, but I know a lot of people are liking it. It has like an incredibly high Goodreads score. Take what I, like always, like take what I say with a grain of salt. Next, I read a bunch of books. I counted each of them individually for my reading goal, but like really it is like a short story / novella collection called Scared Sexy, which is a Kindle Unlimited exclusive, which is a bunch of romance authors have written like Halloween romances they're all like monster romances. So none of them are just like two regular people on Halloween. I'm trying to think through what the monsters are. We had like vampire romance, we had like a voodoo romance, we had just like a generic monster romance, we had like a evil hiking hill spirit romance. There's a bunch of them. My two favorites were Hot for Slayer, Ali Hazelwood's, and My Boyfriends Are All Monsters by Kimberly Lemming. Those are my two favorites, but I really did enjoy all of them. I go in depth in my reviews in total on each of them in my video where I read all of them. So if you want my like detailed reviews, that's where you'd look there. But I think if you're looking for like Halloween romances that give kind of like Disney Channel original movies, but like very spicy, these are the books for you. And you know what? My favorite type of Halloween is Disney Channel original movie Halloween. As I said in that video, this was for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. Okay. Next, I read Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I'm just an Ali Hazelwood girl. Like, I'm a fangirl of Ali Hazelwood at this point. I just find her to be such a delight. I think she really like writes in such a like joyful way and like channels joy so beautifully. Like, her books just are like so nice. When I'm having a hard time, I know I can turn to an Ali Hazelwood and she'll make me feel better, you know? This one is the sequel to Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which takes place in this world in which humans, vampires, and werewolves live kind of are like aware of each other. They live, I don't want to say in harmony, because they definitely live like very divided lives, like vampires over here, werewolves over here, humans over here, but they are very well aware of each other. There are like political conversations between these three factions. And we are following Serena, who is Misery's best friend in the first book. I don't want to talk too much about the basis of this book because I do feel like it spoils some details from Bride, but we're following Serena as she has this like romance with a werewolf from the Northwest Pack. So we're leaving Misery because Misery lives in the Southwest. I don't remember where she lives. I think she lives in the Southwest. And then we're up in the Pacific Northwest with Serena and Cohen, who's the alpha of this pack. Again, I won't explain why she's up there, but she has some reasons for being up there. There's a lot of plot in this one. Like, a lot happens. Again, I love a plotty little romance, and this one has a lot of plot. Like, we have a whole plot about, like, Serena and what's happening with her, about the stuff that she learns at the end of the last book, and we also have a plot about, like, the politics of the Pacific Northwest werewolf group and like their origins and what's happening there. And then we of course have the romance between Cohen and Serena. This one is even spicier, I would say, than Bride, and gets even more werewolfy. I compared it to The Fake Mate by Lana Ferguson in my like initial review that I did in my reading vlog, because it does have some like Omegaverse implications that are happening in the book. But I loved it. It definitely would say it's like pretty spice forward, pretty heavy on the spice, but like, what a delightful time. I loved it. I don't know if we have another one coming from this universe, and I'm like, would love more. I like love the vampire werewolf world. Ali, if you're out there listening, please give us another one of the series. I want to see a vampire story, or maybe a human. No, well, not just two humans. That'd be really boring. We're in this world, but it's just two humans. They're like, vampires are real. Anyway, let's have our human romance. I don't know. I'm not the writer of these tales, Ali Hazelwood. You are, but I would like more from this world. Please and thank you. Then finally, the very last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is I read The Awakening, the first book in the Zodiac Academy by Suzanne Valenti and Carolyn Peckenham. I read and DNF'd this book back in 2023 and wound up having to pick it up because of the like reading challenge I'm doing. And I did finish it, and like, you know what? I didn't have a bad time. I did not have a bad time. I didn't have a great time. Would this be a book that I would eagerly pick up the sequel? Not on my own volition, but everyone is like, you have to continue, Nichelle, you have to continue. The reason I DNF'd this book initially, I guess I should tell you the premise of the book. The premise of the book is we're following these twin girls, Darcy and Tori. They think they're regular human girls. They're not. They're actually fae princesses that were like change-linked into the human world. They get taken to the fae world and they're like, hey girls, welcome back. We're so glad we found you. You guys have been lost. And they're like, okay, we didn't know we've been lost. They were living like the foster care system. Their lives were not good in the human world. They're brought to the fae world and they're like, you can have your inheritance as fae princesses, but you have to finish your college education first. Those are the rules. And they're like, okay, we'll finish our college education. And they're like, gorgeous. Welcome to Magic College. Welcome to the Zodiac Academy, which is like college for all of these fae. And they get there and people are not thrilled that they're back. They're like, we lost you and we were not trying to find you. There are four heirs that were supposed to take over the throne, that because like the king and queen are gone, like their real mom and dad are dead. And so they've kind of like been dealing with the world in the meantime, these boys, and they thought they were going to take over the land. And now these girls are here and they're not happy about it. And like, there's a lot of political drama and the girls just like literally want the money and they want to leave. And there's also magic, and they have never used their magic, but also they're the most powerful girls in all the land. And so now they have access to all this magic, but they don't really know how to use it. And there's also this professor that is already being inappropriate with one of the girlies. And, everyone is just like really mean. The reason I stopped initially was because everyone is so mean to these girls. Like, these girls just got here and everyone's so mean to them. It is such a mess. I'm like, a Romantasy where? I don't see a romance in sight. I think the romance is going to be with Professor Orion and Darius. That's my thoughts, my feelings, my opinions. I don't know if that's true. And I didn't really see a lot of evidence of a romance happening. I do think there's a spicy scene, and I can't even remember who it's between. Somewhere in the book. I do remember like a hands and pants situation, but I can't remember much about it. And I like just posted that video. People are already being like, girl, you have to finish. You have to keep reading. It gets better. I'm like, when does the romance come in? I'm not reading this bad book series. No offense to the authors. The first book is not really well written, with all the love of my heart. It's kind of a mess, okay? And everyone's being so mean. I'm like, when is there like romance? I'm not going to be here if it's just like, garbage. You know what I mean? What's this too mean? When does the romance start? It like sort of feels like Vampire Diaries. It feels like 2010s, like urban fantasy YA, hush hush. But you know, like that vibe. It feels very YA, I guess, is the thing. And like they advertise it as like upper YA, though like it's definitely like PG-13, maybe R-rated. Anyway, I don't know if I'm gonna continue. Like, all the girlies are telling me to keep going, and I know that people love the series, and I want to love it too. But like, everyone's just so mean. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I probably am not going to continue it immediately, but like, who knows? Maybe I'll continue it in the future. Maybe I'll do it for a video, and then I'll feel justified in keeping going. That is everything I have read over the last few months. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you want more videos from me, please make sure to subscribe. Comment down below and tell me why, if I should continue Zodiac Academy, and why, and when it gets good. Give me hope. Because all the girls are telling me to continue, but they're not even telling me when it gets good. Because if I have a light at the end of the tunnel I can reach for, maybe that's something I can move towards. But right now I just have vague promises of getting better. It's not enough. Not enough. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. Bye.